When it comes to reptile products, most of it is just malarkey. But there are 5 things we're going to go over today that you absolutely must have in your reptile room. And I'm going to show you. My name's Adam, this is Diamond, you're watching Wickens Wicked Reptiles, stick around. Item number 1, and something I am so sad I even have to put on this list, calcium powder. Now the reason I'm including something so obvious, covered in every care guide you'll ever read, is because I've seen a lot of banter on Reddit and Facebook about people making their own supplements. Seriously, buying pills and crushing them up, don't do this. Not a lot of time required with this one, I think. The point is, buy something made for reptiles. The people who make them know what they're doing. It's made in a lab rather than being made in, I don't know, the butt end of a knife on a cutting board or something, however you're doing it. I think that this is super obvious, and if you're scratching your head thinking there's no way this is real, just let's kind of move on from this. I really wish that it wasn't. It costs $7. This costs $7 and will last you months. Oh, and just before we move on, yes, obviously you should do your research. Research what you need to give to your reptile, D3, supplements, and calcium, and anyway, let's please move on from this. Product number 4, ABG mix and clay balls. We put them together. Basically bioactive substrates and mediums. And the reason that I'm doing this, although I'm a big proponent of do-it-yourself, making your own, saving money, buying stuff from hardware stores, I just think that there's really no savings in terms of money or really anything, but there's a big savings in time if you just go buy what is made for these enclosures. And this is what I mean. If you go and you buy reptile products to make your own ABG mix, something like, an ABG, by the way, is just like a substrate that is made for humid bioactive enclosures. Anyway, if you go and you buy yourself a brick of Eco-Earth from a reptile store, and then you buy some sphagnum moss from a reptile store, you're paying way more money than just buying a bag of ABG mix. And yes, you can save a couple of bucks if you go to this hardware store and you buy, a sphagnum moss, and you go to this other one and you can find some coconut, like the whole thing, right? But I just think that you might save maybe $8 for a giant bag of this stuff. It's probably just easier to go to the same reptile store that you'd buy the clay balls. Although, you can use gravel. And if you're confused, what am I even talking about? In an enclosure like this one, where you have to have a drainage layer, that's what the clay balls are for, although you can use sort of gravel or something else like that, and then you put a layer of fiberglass mesh or some sort of mesh to separate it from the substrate, which is the ABG. So now that we're all caught up, I think it's just so much easier to buy the clay balls that are made for this type of thing, because it's going to be basically the same price at a greenhouse or a nursery or something like that, which is mainly where you would find them if you wouldn't find them at a reptile store. People use these for growing things like orchids, for example. So I think that just because it's so much easier to get everything all in one, you're not saving any money from buying it somewhere else, just go ahead and buy this. And by the way, clay balls, this could be, like clay rocks instead. It doesn't have to be like balls, hydro balls or whatever. These ones here that I'm showing, I bought at a reptile store. I am almost positive these things came on a pallet from a nursery at a discounted price because they had to buy a pallet, and then they're upsold a little bit, marked up a little bit at the reptile store, and you're basically paying what you'd pay for something that is branded by Zoomet or Exoterra or Flute, whatever, right? So just save your time and go buy stuff that's actually made for bioactive enclosures. Okay, let's get into something a little bit more fun and surprising. Air purifiers. Now, this bad boy here is the Levoit, what's the model number? 400S, Core 400S. I'm not sponsored by these guys. If you buy one of these, I get no money unless you buy it in the next 2 days and use the code below. But regardless, you get 5% off if you do that. This item dropped today. Now, it doesn't have to be this one. You can use basically any air purifier. I've used a whole bunch of them my entire reptile keeping career, but even before that. And the reason I'm such a big proponent of them is because I understand air quality being extremely asthmatic. So if you put one of these bad boys in your reptile room and just start it up, it'll tell you in the middle, I don't even know what the units are, bad things per million we'll call them, right? BPMs. So if you put this in your reptile room, you're gonna find it very high, 25, 30 BPMs. That's beats per minute also. Bad parts per million. This blue number here will say like 30 or something like that. That's what it did in my house, and I have a HEPA air filter in my furnace. So it'll probably be worse in your house if you're not doing something like that. It's going to get rid of the smell big time. We talked about in this video right here, I hate the smell of so many poops basically every day because I have 75, 100 reptiles depending on, you know, babies going in and out and things like that. I get a lot of poo smell all the time, and it's contained to that room, but as soon as you walk in there, especially if Franny or Marowak or one of the bigger snakes takes a big dump and it's fresh, it reeks. This thing, I couldn't even believe how well it got rid of the smell. Now, for you, you have a couple, it doesn't really matter. If you have something like chameleon or something that has a propensity to get a respiratory infection. Not all chameleons, by the way. I know chameleon people already don't like me because of videos like this one. But if you have an animal, or if you just really want to take it to the next level in terms of making sure that the air is moving, the air is pure and as clean as possible for not only your reptiles, but for you, and to get rid of the smell, get an air purifier. Doesn't have to be this one. If you want this one, link below, drop today, great price. Of all the air purifiers I've ever used in my asthmatic life, this is by far the best one. And I'm not getting paid to say that. It's just the truth. But Lavoie, thanks for sending me this. I appreciate it. Just before we do move on, this might be your last chance to enter at 100,000 subscribers, which is coming up. We're giving away 10 free shirts. All you have to do to enter is leave this emoji in the comments section, like this video and subscribe, and follow the Instagram channel. We're gonna draw at 100,000 subscribers live, and well, you guys know how draws work. Number 2. Vet grade cleaners. Now, I'm not sponsored or have an affiliate link for this. I just use F10. It's the one that I choose to use. There's chlorhexidine, I think it's called. But anyway, I'll put it right here. I'm dumb. The only one I've ever used is F10 because it's just the easiest one to find here in Canada. If you're in Canada, Dino Reptiles is where I buy mine. If you're in the US, just type in veterinary grade cleaner and you'll find it pretty easy at basically anywhere that sells reptile supplies. Now, you could use Dawn dish soap. That's what I did forever, especially for tubs. I would take all my tubs from my reptile room, I would bring them upstairs in my bathtub, or if it was nice outside for the 13 days where it's above zero in Canada, I would take them outside and hose them down and use Dawn dish soap and a brush or a sponge, whatever. But I find it so much easier and so much faster just to mix this stuff up. It's like 5 milliliters. Why do I always have sound on? It's like 5 milliliters for 1 liter of water. So it's lasts forever. I've had this since 2016. Okay, so it's something that really does the job. It actually turns out to be cheaper than Dawn dish soap unless you're like really stingy with it.
Don't be stingy.
But you just mix this up, you spray it down, you wipe it out, and unlike some types of detergents that you might use, when you rub your finger on the dried container that you just cleaned with this, or enclosure, whatever, I use it for everything, it doesn't feel like there's a film. It feels like brand new, like the day that you bought it. And the reason I choose to use this, not only is it just kind of cost saving and just time saving, it's a veterinary grade cleaner. If you go and take your animal to the vet to have an operation, what they're using to clean all the things in the veterinary office is this, not Dawn dish soap. Dawn dish soap might be good enough for ducks, but it's not good enough for my reptiles. Well, it is. It's just, it takes more time. I feel like this is an anti-Dawn commercial. I like ducks though. I like ducks. And number one thing that you absolutely need, front opening enclosures. Well, okay, so I'm gonna put this as glass front opening enclosures because we talked about PVCs in a very similar video, which you can watch right here. You guys know I love PVC enclosures. I use them for everything that it makes sense to use them for, but there are certain animals like bearded dragons, although I do have him in a PVC, which is made by Cages, because it has such crazy airflow. The airflow and the ventilation that Cages makes in their PVCs is just a step above. And if you do want a Cages enclosure, there's a link below. Use code WWR at checkout for $20 off. But if you want something a little bit more cost efficient, more easily found on Kijiji or Craigslist or something like that, then a glass front opening enclosure might be better. And some people just like the aesthetics of them. I think that if you put a bunch of vertical ones together on a rack, it looks beautiful, and there's more options in terms of sizes than there are with PVC. So that's why I think that, especially if you have leopard geckos, bearded dragons, Euromat, whatever, something that needs airflow, lots of evaporation of any sort of moisture because they need a lower humidity level, glass front opening enclosures are the bread and butter of keeping reptiles, in my opinion. And the reason I pick front opening rather than a top is because if you have lights on the top of it, well, you'd have to move the lights every time you move the, you know what I mean? And simply, it's just less stressful for an animal to be picked up from the side than over top. A lot of animals, like bearded dragons, have a third eye, which they can see shadows above. That's how they can tell if there's a hawk above them. And although Diamond is pretty chill and I can like do this all day and he doesn't care, some animals get freaked out from going above. Just going in the side is a little bit less stressful most of the time. And did I mention they're a heck of a lot cheaper? I've got several of these things for literally like $20, all the way up to a bigger one for $60. I actually traded a glass front opening enclosure for Irwin, one of my blue tongue skinks. So there's always a need for them. They hold their value decently well if you buy them used in the first place. And it doesn't really matter if you buy Exoterra or Zoomed because I'm not sponsored by either, so it doesn't really matter. Exoterra, double doors, I like those better personally, and Zoomed, they have one single door. So, and there's a bunch of other companies as well. I just can't think of any off the top of my head. And there you go. That is it. Those are your 5 things that you can't live without in your reptile room. And I know if you keep going back, this guy talked about an air purifier. Like seriously. Try it out, buy one used and put a new filter in it. You'll be blown away how much of a difference it makes. I no longer suck on my puffer when I'm cleaning reptiles anymore. It's a weird thing to say. And as always, a special thank you to the Patreon supporters. You guys are freaking amazing. I appreciate you. You get an extra video every once and then. You got one last week. You're getting one next week that is Patreon only. You get to know about animals in my collection that I only tell Patreon about. And you get discounts on the merch, videos early. And if you want to be part of the crew for as little as $1 a month, you can be a Patreon too. That rhymed. And I think I plugged absolutely everything now. So hit like, hit subscribe. I really appreciate it if you do. It actually helps this channel immensely. And I think that means I'll talk to you on Thursday.